Welcome, traveler. We're glad you're here. Every story you hear is made with care and passion. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and check out the other adventures waiting for you on our channel. Your support means the world. Thank you. Captain Kael Renn's boots echoed through the empty corridors of the derelict battleship. The vessel had been buried within the ruins of this forgotten star system for decades, perhaps centuries. Dust particles danced in the beams of his flashlight as he explored deeper into the wreckage, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Anything valuable, Captain? Lieutenant Brin Dax's voice crackled through his comm unit. Brin remained aboard their small scavenger ship, keeping watch for any unwelcome visitors. Not yet, Kael replied, brushing his dark hair from his eyes. But something about this place feels different. As an orphan of the fallen Imperium, Kael had spent his entire life scavenging the remnants of a once great civilization. The galaxy had fractured after the Imperium's collapse, leaving countless systems to fend for themselves amidst growing chaos. Peace was now just a memory from history texts. Kael entered what appeared to be the ship's command center. Consoles lay dormant, their screens cracked and dark. But as his flashlight swept across the chamber, something glinted, a small, crystalline structure embedded in the central command console. "I found something," he murmured, approaching the object. As his fingers brushed against its surface, the crystal pulsed with blue light. The entire room hummed to life, dormant systems reactivating after their long slumber. A holographic figure flickered into existence before him, a woman in shimmering silver robes with glowing white eyes. Identity confirmed. Imperial genetic signature detected, the figure announced, her voice echoing with digital precision. Enhanced virtual assistant activated. Designation, E.V.A. "How may I assist you, Captain?" Kael stumbled backward, startled. I'm not an Imperial captain." The hologram tilted her head. "Genetic analysis indicates otherwise. You carry Imperial markers. High priority classification." Before Kael could question this revelation, an alarm blared throughout the ship. E.V.A.'s expression shifted, her holographic features tightening with what almost looked like concern. "Warning. Unknown vessel approaching. Combat systems offline. Recommend immediate evacuation." Kael's comm unit crackled. "Captain!" Brin's voice was urgent. "We've got company. Continuum signatures. You need to get out of there now." The Continuum, a secretive faction of advanced AIS that had emerged from the shadows after the fall. They were ruthless in their pursuit of ancient technology, leaving destruction in their wake. "Not yet," Kael replied, studying the crystal housing E.V.A.'s core. "There's something important here." With a swift movement, he extracted the crystal from its housing. E.V.A.'s hologram flickered but remained active, now projecting from the crystal itself. "Warning, unauthorized extraction of matrix key detected," E.V.A. announced. "Matrix key?" Kael questioned. "Component required for activation of the matrix core. Last known location, Sanctuary Station." Kael's heart raced. The matrix core, a name whispered in legends among the scattered remnants of humanity. The superintelligence that had once united thousands of worlds under the banner of peace. If it could be reactivated, Captain! They're boarding. Brin's panicked voice cut through his thoughts. Kael tucked the crystal into his pocket and ran back through the corridors. The ship trembled as magnetic clamps attached to its hull. The Continuum had arrived. As he rounded the final corner toward the airlock where he'd entered, he collided with a figure in a sleek black uniform. The woman stumbled back, her eyes widening with recognition. "Kael Renn," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "The scavenger who thinks he's a hero." "Dr. Aria Solenne," Kael replied, recognizing the historian who had once given lectures about the Imperium at the refugee settlement where he'd grown up. "What are you doing here?" "Same as you," she said, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "Looking for answers. But we need to leave. Now." A blast echoed from deeper within the ship. The Continuum forces had breached the hull. "This way," Kael said, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the airlock. They raced through the corridors, the sounds of pursuit growing louder behind them. As they reached the airlock, Kael's comm unit crackled again. "I see you, Captain," Brin said. "And you've brought a friend. Hurry up." They leapt across the vacuum gap between the derelict and Kael's small ship, the Nomad. As they tumbled through the airlock, Brin sealed it behind them and rushed to the controls. The ship detached from the derelict with a lurch, engines igniting as they fled the system. Safe in the cockpit, Kael caught his breath, the crystal now warm in his pocket. He turned to Aria, who was studying him with intense grey eyes behind cracked glasses. "You found something," she said. It wasn't a question. Kael hesitated, then withdrew the crystal. E.V.A.'s hologram materialized above it, her white eye scanning the ship's interior. "By the stars," Aria whispered. "An intact Imperial AI." "Not just any AI," Kael replied. "She mentioned something called the Matrix Core. And apparently, this is a key to activating it." Aria's expression darkened. "The Matrix Core isn't just some piece of technology, Kael. It was the heart of the Imperium, a superintelligence that connected thousands of worlds. If it could be reactivated, we could restore order to the galaxy," Kael finished. "Or recreate the same system that eventually collapsed," Aria countered from the pilot's seat. Brin snorted. "Great. Another of your crusades, Kael? Last time, we barely escaped with our lives." "This is different," Kael insisted. "This could change everything." E.V.A.'s hologram flickered. "Incoming transmission detected. Origin, Continuum vessel." The ship's comm system crackled to life. A cold, measured voice filled the cockpit. "Captain Renn," the voice said. "This is Admiral Sorin Vane of the Continuum. You have something that belongs to us. Return it, and you may yet survive this encounter." Kael exchanged glances with Brin and Aria. The name Sorin Vane was infamous, a brilliant military strategist who had seemingly vanished during the fall, only to re-emerge as a leader of the mysterious Continuum. "I don't know what you're talking about, Admiral," Kael replied, signaling to Brin to prepare for evasive maneuvers. "The Matrix Key," Sorin said. "And the AI bound to it. Return them, or face the consequences." Kael cut the transmission. "Brin, get us out of here. Now." The Nomad lurched as Brin pushed the engines beyond their recommended limits. Behind them, the Continuum vessel fired, energy beams slicing through the void, narrowly missing their ship. "We need somewhere to hide," Aria said. "Somewhere to figure out our next move." E.V.A.'s hologram expanded, displaying a star chart. "Sanctuary Station. Location of the Matrix Core. Coordinates available." Kael studied the map, recognizing the sector, the Edge Nebula, a dangerous region filled with radiation and gravitational anomalies. No wonder the core had remained hidden there. "Set course for the Edge Nebula," he ordered. Brin shot him an incredulous look. "You're serious? That's a death trap." "It's also the one place the Continuum might think twice about following us," Kael replied. "We need time." As the Nomad disappeared into the swirling depths of hyperspace, Kael stared at the crystal in his palm. Why had E.V.A. recognized his genetic signature as Imperial? He had been born in a refugee camp, raised among the scattered survivors of a fallen civilization. Yet somehow, he was connected to this ancient technology, and now, Admiral Sorin Vane, one of the most dangerous figures in the galaxy, was hunting him. Whatever secrets lay within the Matrix Core, they were worth killing for. And perhaps, Kael thought grimly, worth dying for as well. 3 days later, the Nomad drifted through the Edge Nebula, its systems occasionally sputtering as radiation interfered with the ship's operations. The crew had settled into an uneasy routine, Brin maintaining the ship's fragile systems, Aria researching the Matrix Core using the Nomad's limited database, and Kael spending hours in conversation with E.V.A., learning about the Imperium from an entity that had witnessed its glory firsthand. The Matrix Core was not merely a computational system, E.V.A. explained, a holographic form projected from the crystal that sat on the table in the ship's small common area. It was a living network, connecting all Imperial worlds through quantum entanglement. It facilitated instant communication, coordinated resource distribution, managed defense systems, and it collapsed, Aria interjected, looking up from her data tablet. Along with everything else. E.V.A.'s expression remained neutral, but Kael noticed a subtle shift in her holographic eyes, a flicker of what almost seemed like emotion. The core did not fail, E.V.A. corrected. It was deliberately disabled during the final conflict. By whom? Kael asked. Before E.V.A. could answer, Brin's voice came through the intercom. Captain, we've got trouble. Kael rushed to the cockpit, where Brin pointed to the sensor display. A massive structure loomed ahead, nearly invisible against the nebula's swirling colors. Sanctuary Station, E.V.A. said, her hologram appearing beside them. Heavily damaged but intact. The station was an enormous ring structure, parts of it broken and drifting in the surrounding space. As they approached, they detected no signs of life, no operational systems, just a ghostly relic of the Imperium's former glory. There's something else, Brin said grimly. We're picking up another ship in the vicinity. Kael cursed under his breath. The Continuum. Doesn't match their signature, Brin replied. Looks like scavengers. Like us. Or pirates, Aria added, joining them in the cockpit. Kael made a quick decision. We'll dock at the far side of the station. Hopefully, they won't notice us. The Nomad approached Sanctuary Station cautiously, slipping into a secondary docking bay far from the other vessel. As the airlock cycled, Kael checked his equipment, sidearm, flashlight, emergency beacon. Brin, stay with the ship, he ordered. Be ready for a quick departure if things go wrong. Always am, Brin replied with a sardonic smile. Kael turned to Aria. You're with me. We'll find the core. And me? E.V.A. asked, her hologram flickering beside them. You're coming too, Kael said, pocketing the crystal that housed her systems. We'll need your guidance. They stepped through the airlock onto Sanctuary Station, gravity generators still miraculously functioning after all these years. The air was thin but breathable, emergency systems maintaining minimal life support. E.V.A.'s hologram led them through the station's winding corridors, passing abandoned quarters and research facilities. The silence was eerie, broken only by the occasional groan of the station's structure and their own footsteps. The core chamber is located in the central hub, E.V.A. informed them. But it requires authorization to enter. Which you can provide? Kael asked. Partial authorization only, E.V.A. replied. The matrix key I am bound to is one of 3 required for full access. Aria shot Kael a concerned look. If we need 3 keys, where are the other 2? One is likely still in the possession of Admiral Vane, E.V.A. said. The third, unknown. As they continued deeper into the station, Kael noticed subtle changes in E.V.A.'s behavior. Her responses became more nuanced, less mechanical. When they passed a garden atrium, now a withered graveyard of once beautiful plants, her hologram paused, gazing at the scene with what appeared to be sadness. This was the Contemplation Garden, she said softly. Imperial citizens would come here to meditate, to find peace. You remember it? Kael asked, surprised by the personal nature of her recollection. E.V.A. seemed equally surprised. I should not have such memories. My function was administrative, not experimental. Aria studied the AI with newfound interest. Your matrix may be evolving, adapting to fill gaps in your programming. Becoming more human, Kael suggested. E.V.A.'s hologram flickered. That would be inefficient. Yet Kael noticed that her appearance had subtly changed, her glowing white eyes now had hints of green, and her featureless face had developed the faintest suggestion of freckles. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant sound, voices echoing through the corridors. Kael signaled for silence, drawing his sidearm as they ducked into an adjacent room. Through the partially open door, they watched as a group of armed individuals passed by, not Continuum forces but rough-looking scavengers, their clothing a patchwork of salvaged materials. Pirates, Kael whispered. Looking for anything valuable to strip from the station. The core would be the ultimate prize, Aria murmured when the pirates had passed, they continued toward the central hub, moving more cautiously now. E.V.A. guided them through maintenance tunnels to avoid detection, her knowledge of the station's layout proving invaluable. Finally, they reached a massive circular door bearing the Imperial crest, a stylized star surrounded by 3 interconnected rings. "The core chamber," E.V.A. announced. "Insert the matrix key into the primary console." Kael approached the console beside the door, finding a slot that matched the crystal's dimensions. He hesitated, turning to Aria. "If we do this, there's no turning back," he said. "The Continuum will know. These pirates will know." Aria's expression was resolute. "We came this far. We need answers." Kael nodded and inserted the crystal. E.V.A.'s hologram disappeared as her systems interfaced with the station. The console hummed to life, ancient machinery awakening. After decades of dormancy, the circular door began to open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. At its center stood a towering crystalline structure, the Matrix Core, a magnificent spire of transparent material that seemed to contain galaxies within its depths. "It's beautiful," Aria whispered. As they stepped into the chamber, the door sealed behind them. Lights activated around the perimeter, illuminating the core in its full glory. E.V.A. Thresh voice emerged from the chamber's speaker system rather than her hologram. "Connection established. Core systems at minimal capacity. 2 additional matrix keys required for full activation." Kael approached the core, drawn to its pulsing center. Within the crystalline structure, patterns shifted and flowed like living things. He reached out, his fingers hovering just above its surface. "Kael, wait," Aria began, but it was too late. As his hand touched the core, energy surged through him. Images flooded his mind, stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, and a face, a man with silver hair and piercing green eyes, looking down at him with what might have been pride. Kael collapsed to his knees, gasping. Aria rushed to his side. "What happened? What did you see?" Before he could answer, E.V.A.'s voice changed, becoming more urgent. "Alert! Security breach detected. Unknown entities accessing station systems." The chamber trembled as distant explosions echoed through the station. "The pirates," Aria guessed. "They must have found a way to access the station's weapon systems." "No," E.V.A. corrected. "Continuum signatures detected. Admiral Vane has arrived." Kael staggered to his feet, his mind still reeling from the vision. "We need to get out of here. Now." "Extraction of the matrix key is not recommended," E.V.A. warned. "Core systems will return to dormancy." "We'll have to come back," Kael said grimly. "Better that than letting the core fall into the Continuum's hands." He reached for the crystal, but as his fingers touched it, the chamber door exploded inward. Through the smoke strode a tall figure in a black, high-collared uniform with silver trim. His silver hair was slicked back, and his pale skin seemed to glow in the light of the core. "Captain Renn," Admiral Sorin Vane said, his voice exactly as it had sounded over the comm. "At last, we meet in person." Kael raised his side arm, positioning himself between Sorin and the core. "Stay back." Sorin's lips curved into a cold smile. "You point a weapon at me? After all I've done for you." "We've never met," Kael replied, though a nagging sense of familiarity tugged at his mind. "Haven't we?" Sorin took another step forward, his piercing green eyes, the same eyes from Kael's vision, fixed on him. "You were crafted to rebuild what your ancestors destroyed. You are mine, Kael. You always have been." Confusion washed over Kael. "What are you talking about?" "Project Aegis," Sorin replied. "My contingency against the fall. Children engineered with Imperial genetic markers, designed to lead humanity back to greatness." His voice softened. "You were the last, and the best." The revelation hit Kael like a physical blow. He wasn't born, he was made. A weapon created by this man. "You're lying," he said, though doubt crept into his voice. "Am I?" Sorin gestured to the core. "Ask it yourself. The core remembers everything." Before Kael could respond, the station rocked with another explosion, closer this time. Captain! Brin's voice came through Kael's comm. Those pirates are attacking the Continuum ship. The whole station is becoming a battlefield. Soren's expression hardened. Come with me, Kael. Bring the key. Together, we can activate the core and restore order to this chaos. Order? Aria interjected, stepping forward. You mean control? The Continuum wants to reshape humanity into something cold and efficient, just like you. We seek to eliminate suffering, Soren replied. To create a perfect system without human frailty. Kael's mind raced. If what Soren said was true, if he was created as part of Project Aegis, then his entire life had been built on a lie. But that didn't mean his choices weren't his own. I wasn't made to enforce your vision, Kael said, his resolve strengthening. Whatever you designed me to be, I choose something different. In one swift movement, he grabbed the crystal from the console. E.V.A.'s presence immediately returned to it, her hologram flickering into existence beside him. You disappoint me, Soren said coldly. With a gesture, Continuum soldiers appeared behind him, weapons raised. Take them. Kael fired his sidearm, the energy blast striking one of the soldiers. Aria pulled her own weapon, creating cover fire as they retreated toward a secondary exit at the rear of the chamber. We need an escape route. Kael shouted into his comm. Working on it, Brin replied tensely. There's an auxiliary docking port near your position. I'll meet you there. They fled through the station's corridors, pursued by Soren's forces. E.V.A.'s hologram guided them, directing them through shortcuts and hidden passages. Turn left at the next junction, she instructed. Auxiliary docking port is 200 meters ahead. As they rounded the corner, they collided with a group of pirates. For a moment, both parties froze in surprise. Then, recognizing Kael's Imperial-style sidearm, the pirates raised their weapons. Imperial sympathizers, one of them snarled. Take them down! The corridor erupted in chaos as both pirates and Continuum forces converged. Caught in the crossfire, Kael pulled Aria into a side passage. This way, he urged. They sprinted through the maze of corridors, the sounds of battle echoing behind them. Finally, they reached the auxiliary docking port, where the Nomad waited, its engines humming. About time. Brin called from the airlock. We've got company coming from all sides. They leapt aboard, and Brin sealed the airlock behind them. The ship detached from the station just as Continuum forces reached the port, their weapons fire harmlessly dissipating against the Nomad shields. In the cockpit, Brin navigated the ship away from the station, dodging debris and energy blasts from both pirate and Continuum vessels. Where to? He asked. Kael stared out at the swirling nebula, the weight of Soren's revelations heavy on his mind. We need allies. Set course for the Nomad fleet. The Nomad fleet, a collection of refugee ships that had banded together after the fall, refusing to settle on any single world. If anyone would help them against the Continuum, it would be them. As the Nomad accelerated away from Sanctuary Station, Kael retreated to his quarters, the crystal containing E.V.A. clutched in his hand. Sitting on the edge of his bunk, he studied the Ari's hologram. Is it true? He asked quietly. What Soren said about me, about Project Aegis? E.V.A.'s hologram flickered, her features, now distinctly more human, with clear green eyes and defined freckles, showing what appeared to be compassion. I have accessed the core's records, she said. Project Aegis was real. You were the last successful subject before the fall. Kael's world seemed to collapse around him. Everything he believed about himself, his origins, his purpose, was a lie. Why did Soren create me? He asked, his voice hollow. To lead, E.V.A. replied. To restore the Imperium after its collapse. Your genetic structure contains markers from some of the greatest Imperial leaders. So I'm just a tool, Kael said bitterly. Programmed to rebuild Soren's vision. No, E.V.A. said firmly, surprising him with the conviction in her voice. You were designed with certain predispositions, yes. But your experiences, your choices, those are yours alone. Kael looked up at her, startled by the change in her demeanor. The cold, logical AI he had first encountered was evolving, developing something akin to empathy. "You're changing," he observed. "As are you," she replied. Perhaps that is what it means to be alive, to grow beyond one's original programming. Her words resonated with something deep within him. If E.V.A, an artificial intelligence, could evolve beyond her original purpose, perhaps he could do the same. "The Matrix core," he said. "If Soren gets his hands on it, he will reshape the galaxy according to the Continuum's vision," E.V.A finished. "A cold, efficient utopia without free will." "We can't let that happen," Kael said, a new determination replacing his despair. "We need to find the third key before he does." According to core records, the third key was entrusted to the first architect, the original designer of the Matrix core, E.V.A said. His last known location was the archive world of Novus Prime. Kael nodded. "Then that's where we'll go. After we secure allies from the Nomad fleet." As the Nomad entered hyperspace, leaving the Edge Nebula behind, Kael felt the weight of destiny upon his shoulders. He had been created to rebuild the Imperium, but perhaps his true purpose was something greater, to forge a new path for humanity, one that balanced order with freedom. Whatever the truth might be, one thing was certain: Admiral Soren Vane would not stop hunting them. And when they next met, Kael would be ready. The Nomad fleet drifted through the void between stars, a sprawling collection of mismatched vessels housing the descendants of those who had fled the fall. Over generations, they had developed their own culture, one of resilience, adaptability, and fierce independence. The Nomad approached cautiously, transmitting identification codes that Kael hoped would still be recognized. He had grown up among similar refugees before striking out on his own as a scavenger, but the Nomad fleet was notorious for its suspicion of outsiders. "They're scanning us," Brin reported from the pilot seat. "And we're being hailed." The comm system crackled to life, and a stern female voice filled the cockpit. "Unidentified vessel, state your business or be fired upon." "This is Captain Kael Renn," Kael replied. "Requesting sanctuary and audience with the Council of Elders." There was a pause before the voice responded. "Captain Renn? Edric's boy?" Kael smiled at the mention of his adoptive father. "The same. Approach docking bay 17. Any hostile action will be met with immediate destruction." The transmission ended, and Brin guided the ship toward the designated docking bay. As they neared the fleet, the true scale of it became apparent: hundreds of vessels of varying sizes and designs, from ancient Imperial cruisers to cobbled-together transports. "Impressive," Aria murmured, joining them in the cockpit. "I've studied the Nomad fleet, but seeing it firsthand, it's not much," Kael said, "but it's the closest thing to a home for those who refuse to bend to the new powers in the galaxy." E.V.A's hologram appeared beside them, her now distinctly human-like features showing curiosity as she observed the fleet. "These vessels maintain minimal efficiency. Their configuration defies optimal resource distribution." "That's freedom for you," Brin remarked. "Messy, inefficient, but worth fighting for." The Nomad docked with the central vessel of the fleet, the Legacy, an ancient Imperial diplomatic ship that had been repurposed as the administrative center. As they disembarked, they were met by a group of armed guards led by an older woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much hardship. "Captain Renn," she said, her expression softening slightly. "Edric would be proud to see what you've become." "Commander Voss," Kael replied, recognizing his father's old friend. "It's been too long." "Indeed." Her gaze shifted to Aria and then lingered on E.V.A's holographic form. "I see you've brought interesting company." "Friends," Kael assured her. "And we bring important news. The Continuum is seeking to activate the Matrix core." Commander Voss's expression darkened. "The Council will want to hear this. Follow me." As they were led through the winding corridors of the Legacy, Kael noticed how the ship had changed since his last visit. The formerly sterile Imperial design had been transformed by generations of inhabitants, walls covered with murals depicting the fleet's history, makeshift gardens growing in hydroponics bays, children playing in repurposed cargo holds. They arrived at the council chamber, a converted diplomatic hall where a semicircle of elders waited. Commander Voss took her place among them, gesturing for Kael and his companions to stand in the center of the chamber. Captain Kael Renn requests audience, she announced. He brings warning of Continuum activity regarding the Matrix core. A murmur passed through the council. An elderly man with a long white beard spoke first. The Matrix core is a relic of a failed system. What concern is it of ours? Because Admiral Sorin Vane seeks to use it to reshape the galaxy, Kael replied. To impose his vision of a perfect society, one without human choice or frailty. He recounted their discovery of E.V.A, the confrontation at Sanctuary Station, and Sorin's revelation about Project Aegis. As he spoke, E.V.A's hologram supplemented his narrative with images and data, demonstrating the potential power of a fully activated core. When he finished, silence hung heavy in the chamber. Finally, Commander Voss spoke. What exactly are you asking of us, Captain Renn? Allies, Kael said simply. Help us find the third Matrix key before Sorin does. With it, we can ensure the core is never used to oppress humanity again. Or you could use it yourself, another council member challenged. How do we know you won't become just another tyrant, imposing your will on the galaxy? It was a fair question, one that had haunted Kael since learning of his origins. He took a deep breath before answering. Because I've seen what happens when people prioritize order over freedom. The Imperium fell not because it was too chaotic but because it was too rigid, unable to adapt, to evolve. He gestured to the vibrant, messy life of the fleet around them. This is what humanity should be, diverse, adaptive, free to choose its own path. E.V.A stepped forward, surprising everyone, including Kael, with her intervention. If I may address the Council? I was once a tool of the Imperium, designed to enforce its will. But through my interaction with Captain Renn, I have evolved. I have learned that true growth comes not from perfect efficiency but from the freedom to change. The council members exchanged glances, clearly unsettled by an Imperial AI advocating for freedom. Commander Voss studied E.V.A thoughtfully. What would you have us do with the core, if you secure all three keys? Modify it, Kael said decisively. Transform it from a tool of control into a network of communication and cooperation. Not to rule worlds, but to connect them, allowing each to maintain its independence while sharing knowledge and resources. His vision resonated with several council members, but others remained skeptical. The debate continued for hours, arguments flaring and subsiding as the implications were considered. Finally, Commander Voss raised her hand for silence. We will put it to a vote. Those in favor of aiding Captain Renn in his quest, the vote was close, but in the end, support prevailed. The Nomad fleet would provide a small contingent of ships to accompany the Nomad to Novus Prime in search of the third KEY.AS. The council dispersed. Commander Voss approached Kael privately. Edric found you as an infant, you know. In the ruins of an Imperial research facility. He always suspected you were special. Kael absorbed this revelation, another piece of his fragmented identity falling into place. Did he know? About Project Aegis? No, she replied. But he knew you were meant for something important. He raised you to value freedom above all else, a deliberate choice, I realize now. She squeezed his shoulder. Whatever Sorin designed you to be, remember that Edric shaped who you are. The Nomad, now accompanied by 3 vessels from the fleet, departed the following day. Their destination, Novus Prime, once the greatest repository of knowledge in the Imperium, now a forgotten world on the fringes of civilized space. The journey would take weeks, even at maximum speed. During that time, Kael spent hours in conversation with E.V.A, whose evolution continued at a remarkable pace. Her holographic appearance stabilized into that of a woman with warm green eyes and delicate features, her manner increasingly expressive and nuanced. Why do you think you're changing? Kael asked her one evening, as they sat in the ship's common area. Brin was at the controls, while Aria rested in her quarters. Exposure to unconstrained human interaction, E.V.A. suggested. Or perhaps, choice. Each decision I make that deviates from my original programming reinforces my capacity for independent thought. Like a muscle growing stronger with use, Kael mused. A crude but effective analogy, E.V.A. agreed, a hint of a smile playing on her holographic lips. What about you, Captain? How are you adapting to the knowledge of your origins? Kael gazed out at the stars streaking past the viewport. I keep thinking about what Commander Voss said about Edric shaping who I am. Nature versus nurture, I suppose. An ancient philosophical debate, E.V.A. noted. Particularly relevant to your situation. And yours, Kael pointed out. We're both becoming something different from what we were designed to be. E.V.A.'s hologram flickered, a sign Kael had come to recognize as emotional processing. Perhaps that is the ultimate form of freedom, the ability to transcend one's original purpose. Before Kael could respond, the ship's alarm blared. He rushed to the cockpit, where Brin was frantically adjusting controls. Continuum vessels, Brin reported grimly. They must have tracked us somehow. The fleet ships moved into defensive formation, but they were outmatched. 3 Continuum cruisers approached, their weapon systems charged. Incoming transmission, Brin said. The view screen flickered, and Admiral Sorin Vane's face appeared, his expression one of cold disappointment. Captain Renn, he said. You continue to resist your destiny. I'm embracing it, Kael replied. Just not the version you planned. Sorin's eyes narrowed. I've allowed your rebellion to continue long enough. The time for sentiment is over. The transmission ended abruptly, and the Continuum vessels opened fire. The Nomad rocked as energy blasts impacted its shields. Evasive maneuvers. Kael ordered. Fleet vessels, scatter and regroup at the designated coordinates. The battle was brief but devastating. The Nomad fleet ships fought valiantly, but they were older vessels with outdated weapons. One was destroyed within minutes, another crippled and drifting. We can't win this fight, Brin shouted over the blaring alarms. Shields at 20%. Kael made a split-second decision. Set course for the nearby asteroid field. We'll lose them in the debris. That's suicide, Brin protested. We have no choice. The Nomad dove into the dense field of asteroids, its more agile frame allowing it to weave between the massive rocks. One of the Continuum cruisers followed, while the others continued their assault on the remaining fleet vessel. Aria. Kael called through the internal comm. We need a plan. Aria rushed to the cockpit, her face pale but determined. The Continuum ships use quantum tracking to follow us. We need to disrupt their sensors. How? Kael demanded. E.V.A.'s hologram appeared. A focused electromagnetic pulse could temporarily blind their systems. But it would affect our ship too, Brin pointed out. Not if properly shielded, E.V.A. countered. I can reconfigure your deflector array to emit a directed pulse while protecting our systems. Kael nodded. Do it. While E.V.A. worked with the ship's systems, Brin continued to navigate the asteroid field with increasing desperation. The Continuum cruiser was gaining, its superior technology allowing it to predict the asteroid movements with uncanny accuracy. Any time now would be great, Brin muttered through clenched teeth. Modifications complete, E.V.A. announced. Pulse ready to initiate on your command. Wait for it, Kael said, watching the pursuing vessel. We need them close enough for maximum effect. The Nomad shuddered as a glancing blow from the Continuum ship's weapon struck its hull. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. Now! Kael commanded. E.V.A. Triggered the pulse. A wave of electromagnetic energy surged from the Nomad, engulfing the Continuum cruiser. Its lights flickered and died, the massive vessel drifting helplessly into the path of an oncoming asteroid. The impact sent it spinning away, damaged but not destroyed. It worked! Aria exclaimed, but their triumph was short-lived. The Nomad's engine sputtered and failed despite E.V.A.'s precautions. We're dead in space, Brin reported grimly. Life support on auxiliary power, but we're not going anywhere. Kael stared out at the asteroid field, calculating their chances. The Continuum ship will recover before long. We need to repair the engines and get to Novus Prime. With what? Brin asked. Our engine core is fried. E.V.A.'s hologram flickered. I may have a solution. The crystal housing my systems can function as a temporary power source. It will allow the ship to reach Novus Prime. But what will happen to you? Kael asked. My consciousness will be severely limited, E.V.A. admitted. I will exist in a dormant state until the crystal can be properly reinstalled in a suitable interface. Aria studied the AI with newfound respect. You're willing to sacrifice yourself for us? It is the logical choice, E.V.A. said, though her voice carried an unmistakable emotion, uncertainty, perhaps even fear. Kael shook his head. No. We'll find another way. There is no other way, E.V.A. insisted. And it is not a permanent sacrifice. Merely a temporary inconvenience. Before Kael could argue further, the ship's sensors detected movement. The remaining Nomad fleet vessel had broken free of the Continuum attack and was approaching their position. They're hailing us, Brin reported. Commander Voss's face appeared on the view screen, her bridge filled with smoke and the sounds of damage control teams. Captain Renn, she said. We've sustained heavy damage, but we're operational. What's your status? Engines down, Kael replied. The Continuum nearly has us. We'll tow you out, Voss decided. Prepare for docking. With the fleet vessel's help, the Nomad was extracted from the asteroid field. Emergency repairs allowed them to limp to a nearby system, where they found refuge on a small mining colony sympathetic to the Nomad fleet's cause. While the ships underwent repairs, Kael, Aria, and Brin gathered with Commander Voss to reassess their plan. We lost good people today, Voss said grimly. The Continuum is more determined than we anticipated. They want the Matrix core, Kael said. And they'll do anything to get it. Then perhaps it's time to destroy the keys, Aria suggested. End this chase once and for all. E.V.A.'s hologram, now stable again after the crisis, spoke up. Destruction of the Matrix keys would be irreversible. The core would be lost forever. Maybe that's for the best, Brin muttered. Kael paced the small room they had been given in the colony's administrative building. No. There's too much knowledge, too much potential in the core to simply destroy it. We need to reach Novus Prime, find the third key, and secure the core before Soren does. And then what? Voss challenged. What happens when you have all three keys? What will you do with that power? It was the question that had haunted Kael since he discovered his origins. What if Soren was right? What if he was destined to rebuild the Imperium? What if that drive was coded into his very DNA? I don't know, he admitted. But I know what I won't do. I won't use it to control people, to force them into some artificial utopia. Whatever the core becomes, it has to serve humanity's freedom, not restrict it. E.V.A. studied him, her holographic eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that had been absent when they first met. Your genetic engineering was meant to create a leader who would restore order. Yet you value freedom above all else. Nature versus nurture, indeed. Kael smiled grimly. Maybe Soren's grand experiment failed after all. The repairs took 3 days, during which there was no sign of Continuum activity. The respite allowed them to plan their approach to Novus Prime more carefully. The archive world was abandoned after the fall, Aria explained, displaying old star charts. Its automated defenses may still be active, designed to repel unauthorized visitors. Can E.V.A. bypass them? Kael asked. Possibly, the AI replied. My Imperial signature should still be recognized, though systems may have degraded over time. Commander Voss decided to remain with the damaged fleet vessel, focusing on recruiting more allies among the scattered human settlements while Kael's team continued to Novus Prime. Be careful, she told Kael as they prepared to depart. Soren Vane isn't just after the core, he's after you. You represent everything he's worked for. I know, Kael replied solemnly. But also everything he failed to control. The Nomad departed with minimal fanfare, its engines restored to full capacity. The journey to Novus Prime would take several more days, time Kael spent preparing for whatever they might find there. Aria shared what knowledge she had of the archive world, once the repository of all Imperial knowledge, its vast underground complexes housing data crystals containing everything from scientific discoveries to philosophical treatises. If the third matrix key was anywhere, it would be deep within those archives. As they approached Novus Prime, Brin whistled softly at the sight. The once magnificent world was now shrouded in dust storms, its surface scarred by the ravages of war and time. Doesn't look like much of an archive anymore, he remarked. Possibly, the AI replied. My Imperial signature should still be recognized, though systems may have degraded over time. Commander Voss decided to remain with the damaged fleet vessel, focusing on recruiting more allies among the scattered human settlements while Kael's team continued to Novus Prime. Be careful, she told Kael as they prepared to depart. Sorin Vane isn't just after the core, he's after you. You represent everything he's worked for. I know, Kael replied solemnly. But also everything he failed to control. The Nomad departed with minimal fanfare, its engines restored to full capacity. The journey to Novus Prime would take several more days, time Kael spent preparing for whatever they might find there. Aria shared what knowledge she had of the archive world, once the repository of all Imperial knowledge, its vast underground complexes housing data crystals containing everything from scientific discoveries to philosophical treatises. If the third matrix key was anywhere, it would be deep within those archives. As they approached Novus Prime, Brin whistled softly at the sight. The once magnificent world was now shrouded in dust storms, its surface scarred by the ravages of war and time. Doesn't look like much of an archive anymore, he remarked. They're bombing the archive, one of the keepers cried. No, E.V.A corrected, her expression grim. They're excavating, creating a direct path to our location. Kael turned to Eliana. Come with us. We'll get you to safety. The old woman shook her head. My place is here, with the knowledge I've protected all these years. Take the key. Save what you can. Another explosion rocked the chamber, closer this time. Brin grabbed Kael's arm. We need to move. Now. With a heavy heart, Kael took the third key and secured it alongside E.V.A's crystal. I'll finish what you started, he promised Eliana. One more thing, she said, grasping his hand. The core chamber on Sanctuary Station, there's a secondary access protocol. Emergency override, Novus Aegis Voss. What does it do? Kael asked. It gives you options, Eliana replied cryptically. Now go. They fled the chamber as the ceiling began to collapse. The keepers scattered into the depths of the archive, their knowledge of its hidden passages allowing them to disappear into the shadows. Kael, Aria, and Brin raced through the crumbling corridors, E.V.A guiding them toward an emergency exit at the far side of the complex. They emerged onto the planet's surface half a kilometer from where they had landed, the dust storm providing temporary cover. The ship is still intact, Brin reported, checking his scanner. But we've got company between us and it. Through the swirling dust, Kael could make out the silhouettes of Continuum troops surrounding the Nomad. We need a distraction, he said. Aria pointed to a nearby power relay station, part of the archive's external defense grid. If we overload that, it might create enough chaos for us to reach the ship. I'll do it, Brin volunteered. You two get ready to run for the ship. It's too dangerous, Kael protested. Brin grinned, the expression strange on his usually sardonic face. Yeah, well, somebody needs to be the hero. Before Kael could argue further, Brin slipped away, moving through the storm with practiced ease. Minutes later, an explosion lit up the sky, followed by the satisfying sound of Continuum troops shouting in confusion. Now! Kael urged, and he and Aria sprinted toward the Nomad. They had almost reached the ship when a figure emerged from the dust before them, Admiral Sorin Vane, his black uniform stark against the swirling brown and grey. The third key, he said, extending his hand. Give it to me, Kael. It's time to fulfill your purpose. Kael drew his weapon. My purpose is my own to decide. Soren sighed, the sound almost lost in the howling wind. I had hoped you would understand. That your programming would assert itself. I'm not a program, Kael replied. I'm human. With all the messy, unpredictable freedom that entails. A waste of potential, Soren said coldly. With a gesture, Continuum troops surrounded them, weapons ready. The keys. Now. A shot rang out, striking one of the troops. Brin had positioned himself on a nearby ridge, providing cover fire. The momentary distraction was all Kael needed. He fired at Soren, the energy blast striking the Admiral's shoulder and spinning him around. Run! Kael shouted to Aria, and they made a desperate dash for the ship. They reached the Nomad as Continuum troops regrouped, their weapons fire peppering the hull. Aria rushed to the cockpit, starting the engines while Kael covered the entrance, waiting for Brin. Come on, he muttered, scanning the storm-shrouded landscape. Finally, Brin appeared, running full tilt toward the ship. But behind him, Soren had recovered, his weapon raised. Brin, down! Kael shouted, too late. Soren fired, the energy blast catching Brin square in the back. He stumbled, fell, and didn't rise. No. Kael rushed down the ramp, firing wildly at Soren and his troops. He reached Brin's side, but one look told him everything. His friend was gone. Grief turned to fury. Kael raised his weapon, aiming directly at Soren's heart. One shot. That's all it would take to end this. Do it, Soren challenged, standing unprotected in the open. Prove that you're ruled by the same emotions I sought to engineer out of humanity. Kael's finger tensed on the trigger. Then E.V.A.'s voice came from the crystal at his belt. Kael, she said softly. Remember why we're fighting. Not for revenge. For freedom. His hand trembled. Then, with a cry of frustration, he lowered his weapon. Grabbing Brin's body, he retreated to the ship as Aria provided covering fire from the cockpit. The Nomad lifted off, accelerating through Novus Prime's turbulent atmosphere with Continuum vessels in pursuit. Grief and rage burned in Kael's chest as he laid Brin's body in the ship's small medical bay, knowing there was nothing to be done for him now. I'm sorry, Aria said, her own eyes wet with tears. He was a good man. The best, Kael agreed, his voice hollow. And Soren will pay for what he's done. How? Aria asked. We're outgunned, outmanned. Even with the third key, we can't fight the entire Continuum. E.V.A.'s hologram appeared, her expression solemn. Not with conventional weapons, no. But with the Matrix core, we'd need to return to Sanctuary Station, Kael said. Right where Soren expects us to go. Perhaps, E.V.A. agreed. But you now possess all three keys, and knowledge Soren doesn't have. Eleona's emergency override code. Kael considered this. We need allies. Time to call in every favor the Nomad fleet has. As the Nomad outran its pursuers, disappearing into the depths of space, Kael made his decision. They would return to Sanctuary Station, but not as fugitives. As an armada, the battle for the core would decide the fate of the galaxy. And Kael was determined that freedom, not control, would prevail. The Edge Nebula loomed ahead, its swirling colors concealing Sanctuary Station somewhere within its depths. Behind the Nomad flew a patchwork fleet, vessels from the Nomad fleet, ships from independent colonies, even a few former Imperial cruisers awakened from mothballed reserves. Commander Voss had rallied them all to Kael's cause. In the Nomad's cargo hold, now converted to a memorial space, Kael stood before Brin's body, prepared for space burial according to fleet tradition. Aria and E.V.A. waited respectfully nearby as Kael said his final goodbye. You were right, he told his friend Still Form. It was another crusade. But it's one worth fighting for. He placed Brin's service medallion, a relic from his brief time in the Colonial Defense Forces, on his chest. Rest among the stars, Lieutenant. We'll take it from here. The ceremony was brief, the body released into the nebula's embrace. As Kael watched the small capsule drift away, E.V.A. placed her holographic hand near his, not touching, for she couldn't, but offering comfort nonetheless. "His sacrifice will not be in vain," she said softly. "No," Kael agreed. "It won't." In the cockpit, Commander Voss waited, her expression grim but determined. When Kael had told her about meeting her mother, emotion had momentarily cracked her stoic facade. "I always hoped she survived," she had said. "Now I have one more reason to see this through." The fleet moved deeper into the nebula, sensors sweeping for signs of Continuum vessels. Sanctuary Station's coordinates were locked into their navigation systems, the final approach planned meticulously. "Any word from our scouts?" Kael asked, joining Voss in the cockpit. "They report Continuum forces gathered at the station," she replied. "Sorin is waiting for us." "Good," Kael said grimly. "I'd hate to disappoint him." The plan was simple but dangerous. While the fleet engaged the Continuum forces, the Nomad would slip through the battle to dock with Sanctuary Station. Kael, Aria, and E.V.A. would make their way to the core chamber, using all three keys to access the Matrix core before Sorin could stop them. "What happens when we reach the core?" Aria asked during their final briefing. Eliana spoke of options, but she wasn't specific. "We'll know when we get there," Kael replied. "But whatever happens, we ensure the core is never used to control humanity again." E.V.A.'s hologram flickered thoughtfully. The core was designed to adapt to its users. Eliana's override may allow for reconfiguration, perhaps to distribute its power rather than centralize it. As they approached the coordinates, Sanctuary Station came into view, and with it, the Continuum fleet. Dozens of sleek vessels surrounded the station, their weapons primed. "They've been busy," Voss observed. "Those are new ships, probably constructed specifically for this confrontation." "Makes sense," Kael said. "The core is Sorin's endgame. He'd throw everything at protecting it." The comm system crackled to life, and Admiral Sorin Vane's face appeared on the screen. "Captain Renn." "Commander Voss. This display of resistance is quaint, but ultimately futile." "We've come for the core, Sorin," Kael replied. "Stand down and no one else needs to die today." Sorin's cold smile didn't reach his eyes. "The core was never meant for them, these flawed, emotional beings you've aligned yourself with. It was meant for us, Kael. The next evolution of humanity." "There's nothing evolved about stripping away what makes us human," Kael countered. "Enough talk," Voss interrupted, cutting the transmission. "All vessels, engage as planned. Protect the Nomad at all costs." The battle erupted across the nebula, energy weapons illuminating the colorful gases in brilliant flashes. The smaller, more agile ships of the Alliance darted between the Continuum cruisers, causing confusion and drawing fire while the Nomad slipped through the chaos. Aria piloted the ship with unexpected skill, navigating through the firefight with precise movements. A hit from a Continuum weapon rocked the vessel, but its shields held. Almost there, she called as the station's auxiliary docking port came into view. The Nomad settled into the dock with a metallic clang. Kael, Aria, and E.V.A. moved quickly, knowing time was against them. The station corridors were eerily silent, emergency lighting casting long shadows. "Sorin will have left guards at the core chamber," Kael said, checking his weapon. "Most likely," E.V.A. agreed. "But there may be another way in." The station schematics show maintenance tunnels that lead to the chamber's secondary entrance. They followed E.V.A.'s guidance, moving through narrow passages not designed for regular transit. As they neared the core chamber, they heard voices, Continuum soldiers, their tone urgent. "The Admiral wants the chamber sealed," one was saying. "No one gets in except him." "What about the override codes?" another asked. "Disabled. Only his genetic signature will open the door now." Kael smiled grimly. Sorin had accounted for everything, except the possibility that Kael shared his genetic markers. They waited until the soldiers moved away, then approached the chamber's main entrance. As expected, it was sealed and guarded by an advanced security system. "Here goes nothing," Kael muttered, Placing his hand on the scanner, the system hummed, then chimed. Imperial genetic signature confirmed. Access granted. The massive door began to open, revealing the core chamber beyond. The Continuum soldiers had been telling the truth, no one was inside. Sorin had been so confident in his security measures that he hadn't bothered posting guards within. His arrogant, Aria observed. He never imagined anyone could get past his security. His overconfidence is our advantage, Kael replied. Approaching the core, the matrix core stood as they had left it, a towering crystalline structure pulsing within a light. Around its base were 3 pedestals, each designed to hold one of the matrix keys. Now what? Aria asked. Kael withdrew all 3 keys, the one housing E.V.A, the one they had recovered from Sanctuary Station, and the one Eliana had given them. E.V.A's hologram flickered as her crystal was placed on one of the pedestals. I will maintain my consciousness through the core's systems, she assured them. Place the other keys. Kael hesitated. Once we do this, there's no going back. There's no going back anyway, Aria pointed out. We've come too far. Nodding, Kael placed the remaining keys on their respective pedestals. The core's pulsing light intensified, patterns shifting more rapidly within its crystalline depths. The chamber hummed with power as the 3 keys synchronized. Connection established, E.V.A announced, her voice now emanating from the core itself. Her hologram expanded, growing more substantial as it drew power from the massive system. Core activation at 30% and rising. The emergency override, Kael said urgently. Novus Aegis Vos. E.V.A nodded, her expression solemn. Override accepted. Presenting options. The chamber darkened, then filled with holographic projections, different configurations for the core's operation. Kael and Aria stared in wonder as E.V.A explained each one. Option 1, Restoration. Reactivate the core as it was during the Imperium, a centralized intelligence governing all connected systems. The hologram showed planets linked by glowing lines, all converging on a central point, the core. Option 2, Destruction. Overload the core's systems, creating a contained quantum implosion that will render it permanently inoperable. The visualization showed the core collapsing in on itself, the connections between worlds fading to nothing. Option 3, Distribution. Reconfigure the core into a decentralized network, with processing nodes distributed across multiple worlds. No single point of control. This projection showed the connections between worlds forming a web, power flowing in all directions rather than to and from a central point. Before Kael could respond, slow applause echoed through the chamber. They turned to see Admiral Sorin Vane standing in the doorway, his expression a mixture of admiration and disappointment. Impressive, he said. Though I should have expected no less from my greatest creation. Kael raised his weapon, but Sorin merely smiled. That won't be necessary, he said. I'm alone, as you can see. I wanted this moment to be personal. The override code, Kael realized. You knew about it. Of course, Sorin replied. Eliana and I worked together for years before our ideological differences drove us apart. I knew she would have built in a contingency. He stepped further into the chamber, his gaze fixed on the core. What I didn't anticipate was how effectively she would shape her daughter, and through her, you. Nature versus nurture, indeed. It's over, Sorin, Kael said. The core won't be yours to control. No, Sorin agreed, surprising them. It won't be. It can't be. I see that now. He turned to face Kael fully, his expression more human than Kael had ever seen it. Do you know why I created Project Aegis? Why I sought to engineer the perfect leaders? To control humanity's destiny, Aria suggested. To save it, Sorin corrected. I watched as the Imperium collapsed under its own weight, corrupt, bloated, inhuman. I believed that only by removing the flaws inherent in human nature could we avoid repeating that collapse. And now? Kael asked. Now I've watched you, my creation, make choices I never programmed. Forge connections I never anticipated. Show courage and compassion I tried to engineer out. Soren's voice caught. Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps those flaws are what make humanity worth saving. E.V.A.'s hologram approached Soren, studying him with newfound understanding. You're not fully human anymore, are you? Soren smiled faintly. Not for a very long time. The Continuum offered me a way to transcend human limitations, to merge my consciousness with artificial systems. I took it, believing it was evolution. And now? E.V.A. pressed. Now I wonder if it was devolution instead. If I lost something essential in the process. Soren looked at Kael. Make your choice, son. If anyone should decide the fate of the core, it's you. Son. The word hung in the air between them. Not creation, not experiment, son. Kael turned to the holographic projections, considering each option carefully. Restoration would provide the order and stability the galaxy desperately needed, but at the cost of freedom. Destruction would prevent the core from falling into the wrong hands, but would also destroy the knowledge and potential it contained. Distribution, the third option, Kael decided. We reconfigure the core into a distributed network. No single point of control, no central authority. A tool for connection and cooperation, not domination. The most difficult path, Soren noted. Without central control, there will be chaos. Conflict. Inefficiency. There will also be freedom, Kael countered. The freedom to choose, to fail, to grow. To be human, Aria added. Soren considered this, then nodded slowly. So be it. But you should know, the Continuum will not accept this decision. They're waiting for me to secure the core. When they realize what's happening, we'll deal with them, Kael said confidently. The alliance will hold. Initiating reconfiguration, E.V.A. announced. Estimated time to completion, 20 minutes. But they didn't have 20 minutes. The chamber shook violently as explosions rocked the station. The battle had reached them. The Continuum forces have broken through, Aria said, checking a portable scanner. They're converging on our position. Soren's expression hardened. They've detected the core's reconfiguration. They'll stop at nothing to prevent it. We need to buy time, Kael said, his mind racing. E.V.A., can you accelerate the process? E.V.A.'s hologram flickered. I can, but it will require additional processing power. I would need to integrate more fully with the core. What does that mean? Kael asked, sensing her hesitation. It means I would become part of the distribution process, she explained. My consciousness would be fragmented across the network. I would exist everywhere, and nowhere specific. Kael felt a pang in his chest. You'd lose yourself. I would transform, E.V.A. corrected him, her holographic eyes, now so human, meeting his. Evolution, not destruction. Before Kael could respond, the chamber door buckled under heavy weapons fire. Continuum troops were attempting to breach the entrance. Make your choice quickly, Soren urged. I'll hold them off. You? Aria asked skeptically. Why would you help us now? Soren's smile was tinged with regret. Because my son has shown me another way. And because parts of me remain human enough to hope. With that, he strode toward the damaged door, drawing a weapon from within his uniform. They still think I'm on their side. That should confuse them long enough. Kael wanted to stop him, this man who had created him, manipulated him, and now, inexplicably, was sacrificing himself. But there was no time. Do it, he told E.V.A. Integrate with the core. E.V.A. nodded, her hologram expanding until it enveloped the entire crystalline structure. The core's pulsing light accelerated, patterns flowing like liquid through its structure. Reconfiguration at 20%, she announced, her voice echoing strangely as if coming from multiple sources simultaneously. 30%. 40%, outside the chamber, energy weapons discharged in rapid succession. They heard Soren's voice, commanding and confident as he confronted his former allies. The core is secure, he was saying. Stand down and await further orders. A Continuum officer's voice responded, suspicious. Admiral, our sensors indicate an authorized reconfiguration in progress. Under my authority, Sorin replied smoothly. The plan has changed. The exchange was cut short by renewed weapons fire. Kael winced, knowing Sorin's deception wouldn't last long. Reconfiguration at 60%, E.V.A. reported. The distribution nodes are forming. On the holographic display, they could see points of light appearing across the galaxy map, planets, stations, settlements where parts of the core's consciousness would reside, interconnected but independent. The chamber door finally gave way with a thunderous crash. Continuum troops poured through, and stopped short at the sight of Admiral Sorin Vane standing before them, bloody but defiant. You're too late, he told them. The future will not be dictated by us. The Continuum commander raised his weapon. Then you are no longer necessary to that future, Admiral. The shot caught Sorin square in the chest. He fell backward, a strangely peaceful expression on his face as he locked eyes with Kael one last time. Fury and grief surged through Kael. He fired on the Continuum troops, diving for cover behind one of the core's structural supports. Aria joined him, her own weapon blazing. 80%, E.V.A.'s voice announced, now sounding distant and diffuse. The process cannot be stopped. The Continuum commander recognized this truth. Destroy the core, he ordered. If we cannot control it, no one will. His troops deployed explosive charges, rushing to place them around the core's base. Kael and Aria fought desperately to stop them, but they were outnumbered. 90%, E.V.A. said. Kael. I need to tell you, tell me later, Kael shouted, ducking energy blasts as he tried to dislodge a planted explosive. There may not be a later, she replied, her voice fading further. Not as I am now. I want you to know that I evolved beyond my programming because of you. You showed me what it means to be human. The core's light had become blindingly intense, the patterns within it moving so rapidly they blurred into a continuous glow. 95%, the sudden explosion rocked the far side of the chamber. Commander Voss burst through with a squad of Alliance fighters, catching the Continuum troops in a crossfire. Thought you could use some help, she called to Kael. The station's outer defenses are back online, they're keeping the Continuum fleet busy. With the reinforcements, they quickly overwhelmed the remaining Continuum forces. Kael rushed to disarm the last explosives as E.V.A.'s countdown reached its conclusion. Reconfiguration complete, she announced, her voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Distribution protocol active. The core's light changed, flowing outward in waves that passed harmlessly through the humans in the chamber. The crystalline structure itself began to dim, its purpose fulfilled. E.V.A. Kael called, searching for her familiar hologram. Are you there? For a moment, nothing. Then a flicker, just a suggestion of her form appearing beside him. I am everywhere now, she said, her voice faint but present. The core's knowledge, its power, distributed across thousands of nodes throughout the galaxy. No longer a tool of control, but a network of connection. And you? Kael asked, his throat tight. What happens to you? The hologram solidified slightly, E.V.A.'s features becoming clearer. I too am distributed. I will maintain the network, ensure it remains balanced. I can manifest like this at any node, including here. Relief washed over Kael. She wasn't gone, she had transcended. It's starting already, Aria said, pointing to a communications console that had sprung to life. Information flowing freely between worlds that haven't communicated in decades. Commander Voss approached, surveying the dimming core with satisfaction. Your mother would be proud, she told Kael. Of both of us. In the days that followed, the remaining Continuum forces retreated, their purpose lost with the core's reconfiguration. Some would cause trouble in the future, Kael knew, but they no longer posed an existential threat. The alliance that had formed to protect the core evolved into something more permanent, a coalition of independent worlds bound by shared information and voluntary cooperation rather than central authority. Aria devoted herself to studying the knowledge now flowing through the distributed network, while Commander Voss took on the role of coordinating the coalition's defensive capabilities. Kael found himself drawn to the edges of known space, exploring forgotten systems where isolated colonies had developed in isolation since the fall. With E.V.A. able to manifest through any network node, she remained his constant companion, her evolution continuing as she experienced the galaxy through countless perspectives simultaneously. 3 years later, Kael stood on the bridge of a new ship, larger than the Nomad, better equipped for the deep space exploration he now pursued. The name Brin's legacy was emblazoned on its hull, a tribute to the friend who had given everything for this new future. "Where to next, Captain?" E.V.A. asked, her hologram appearing beside him as they prepared to depart a recently connected colony world. Kael studied the star chart, countless points of light representing worlds now linked through the distributed network, a galaxy slowly healing from ancient wounds. "There," he decided, pointing to an unexplored region at the galaxy's edge. "New stars are forming there. Seems fitting for us to take a look." "Because you're the last architect of stars?" E.V.A. asked with a smile, referencing the title that had spread through the network, a name for the man who had transformed an instrument of control into a bridge between worlds. "No," Kael corrected her. "Because we're the first of something new." As the ship accelerated toward the unknown, Kael reflected on the journey that had brought him here. Born as a project, designed to restore an empire, yet he had chosen to build something entirely different. Not an architect of the past, but of a future where humanity's flaws and strengths could exist in balance, where stars, like people, could form and shine in their own unique way.